Hey there, folks. Mark Lillibridge here for another edition of Bridges Brawl. Welcome, the third edition. Again, every Tuesday and Thursday, we'll be recording these bad boys and to be released on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts on Wednesdays and Fridays. Typically on Tuesdays, I will be solo flying this bad boy myself. And then on Thursday, we'll have great guests coming up. This week, we have two that are lined up that I'm kind of very excited about, not kind of excited about. We're going to see if we can get them both on. If not, we might try to record one and save it for the following week. But again, Bridges Brawl is all about all things football, but really focusing on the NFL. And again, there's a lot of stuff happening. Even though last week when we talked to Big O, Orlando Algazari, he talked about possibly no college football. Right now with the NFL, we've seen a lot of organizations, Jacksonville Jaguars, Philadelphia Eagles, have come out with plans of partial fans, how they're going to separate people in what they're going to do as far as attendance. Right now the NBA is working on this bubble model as MLS is, and NHL hockey is starting back up again. So, folks, I don't know where we are going forward with football. I'm hoping that there's high school football. I'm hoping there's youth football. But if we can get in some part of the seasons, and the NFL has to. I mean, the NFL, they're going to do everything they possibly can to get a season just because the money's too great, right? And that's what college is battling right now. We've seen so many different colleges, Pac-12 and Big Ten, have come out and said we're going to play conference play. Again, I don't see how it can get done, but I am an optimist. I want it to happen, and there's my belief in this whole thing is all over the board. I'm not going to get into that part of it because I want to keep it about football. I know, Orlando, we got a little bit into the whole deal last week about politics. I don't want to get into that, but I want to focus on football, and we're going to focus on football. Hopefully we will have NFL. NFLPA, NFL have not the talks have not been productive as far as returning and the safety. So as we move further and further into July and then into August, there is that chance of no preseason games. That hurts the undrafted free agents like myself. That hurts the guys that were on the bubble. Hopefully they can get to some resolution where maybe they have almost like what the XFL did. They have a team or a set of players that go somewhere in the country. If that's in, I know Texas, Florida, California are kind of all the hotbeds in Arizona, but maybe there's a spot where these players can go. Maybe that's Nebraska somewhere, maybe in Omaha, maybe it's in Colorado, Kansas, somewhere where the NFL can put some money aside and say, hey, we're going to take $3-4 million, or heck, maybe make every franchise bump up, throw in $1 million. So you got 32 million and go keep a pool of players, almost like I'm going to say a second practice squad where they are in shape, where these guys are working, where they're in a bubble away from the COVID issues, and they can be brought back up during the season, from the teams. Each team can allocate 8 to 10 players off their roster, and then these players go. So you got 300 guys, 400 players set somewhere off in a bubble where we know they're protected from COVID, where we know they're getting medical care, they're training, they're working out. And then players or teams, once they get through their practice squad guys, maybe they can go, farm some of these guys and bring them back and help them, if they have a COVID issue. If they have a group of players that have to get quarantined, then I have another pool of players that they can grasp from. I think this is something that nobody's talked about. Nobody has really mentioned any of this at all. I think this would be a great idea for the NFL to talk about and start to prepare for this, because that helps you then move forward and not have to take a step back if there is some players that get it during the season, get COVID during the season, or some of your players, instead of having to bring, because what happens is when you're coming in and you're going to start bringing out players in for workouts, your roster is going to sit at 55. And then if you have let's say they bump it up and make it a 15-man practice squad. Okay, so you have 70 players that are in your building, but if one of those guys gets COVID, okay, let's say it touches 20 players. So the 20 players now have to be quarantined for for 14 days plus. Well, now that's 2 possible games, maybe 3. You have a pool of players set aside somewhere else that are all going through the protocol, that are all away from family, and that's part of signing on, right? I mean, I know for me, you could have put me in Siberia if you knew that I might have a chance to get called up to play football. But now you have a pool of players where you can go get these players. No, they're not. That either maybe they already have antibodies, or maybe they've already, they're through the quarantine part of it. That's what I would recommend doing. And then you can pull those players up to be able to have active on games. So maybe that group is more than 400. Maybe it's 600. I don't know that number. That's up for the NFL to decide, but I think there has to be a plan in place to be able to go get players to replace players on quarantine, and then maybe they're active for 2 weeks. They get a certain salary, and then if the healthy players come back, the guys that are out of quarantine, they come back, you roll them right in. And you can only use those exemptions for quarantine players or COVID players, not for injury reserve, not for a guy with a knee injury or a concussion or whatever else. You strictly have players that are maybe already have antibodies for COVID or are in a bubble so they can't get COVID or get tested for COVID so you know they haven't gotten it, and then move them. And that's, again, you're going to have to put some people aside, some players aside, and they're not going to be able to see family. They're not going to be able to – they have to literally live in a bubble mentality. But if the NFL wants to work it, one, they have the money. Two, they can set that aside and put those protocols into place. But that's something I would start working on ASAP, because that's going to be something you're going to definitely need in October, November, December when the hot button, when the flu starts rolling in here, if you're going to try to have a season. Now, again, null and void if there's no season. But this is definitely an idea that I think needs to be floated by the NFLPA, needs to be floated through the NFL, and I think it's a no-brainer for me. If I'm in a front office, that's a smart move to be able to go get guys that you already know, players that you've already allocated, almost like you're allocating a player to a spring league. Now you're allocating him farm system somewhere in a bubble so you can go pull those players. Think of it as AAA for baseball. That's what you're really doing here for football. And heck, if you want to do it, where each AFC East, AFC West, they all have their own pool of players that they can go get to pick from. I think that'd be a genius, and it's actually too easy to be able to get it done. And I think it's a no-brainer for teams to be able to do that. So as we move forward, I think that'll be something to look for. And I think this will gain momentum. I think it'll be something that people should talk about. If the NFL is thinking about trying to get a season in, just because without a preseason, you're not going to have guys as in good shape. You're going to be limited in practices. There are going to be guys getting injured, but then you also have that risk of COVID. And so it'd be nice that you can use your guys on practice squad for the injured players, but it'd be nice instead of having to fly a kid in from Seattle. You don't know where he's been. You don't know if he's been up to Canada. You don't know if he's been traveling. Great. Yeah. Hey, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Have you been outside the States? Have you traveled outside in 14 days? If I'm fighting for a job, you think that kid's going to tell the truth? You think he's going to say, oh, yeah, I just happened to make a run up to British Columbia the other day. Or I know the border's closed. I'm joking. But, yeah, no, I ran down to California to go see, my girlfriend. Or I went somewhere else. Nobody's telling that. Nobody's telling that truth. To blow opportunity to get a chance for the NFL team. Set some guys off somewhere in some land in Nebraska or some facility somewhere. There's enough of them out there. You can make it definitely work. So that's my idea for the NFL to help if they have a season to work through some of these COVID cases where guys end up getting COVID during the season, and then that way then they can figure out where they're at with and moving forward into the season. So the other things I want to talk about, big day tomorrow. So today we're sitting here, of course, recording this July 14th, 2020. Franchise tags tomorrow. Franchise tags are tomorrow. We've already saw a huge deal for one of my favorite players in the NFL. I think Chris Jones for the Kansas City Chiefs he has been a monster, an absolute monster for that team. And I'm going to touch on something first, and then we're going to get back to Chris Jones. I worked for him, so I'm biased. So I think the guy is phenomenal. Is he hard to work for sometimes? Yeah, maybe. Is he a little bit rough around the edges at times? Sure. But John Dorsey does not get enough credit for what he did for that roster for the Kansas City Chiefs. I hope the Kansas City Chiefs organization sent him a Super Bowl ring. Guy like Chris Jones drafted on his watch. You got Patrick Mahomes on his watch. I can go the litany of the players on the roster. I can go up and down. Guys he signed in free agency. Guys he brought in. Phenomenal job. The core of that team was drafted on John Dorsey's watch. Tyreek Hill, even though it was a judgment call, he took a lot of grief for that, right? Because with at Oklahoma State, but it paid off as far as him as a player on the football field. Say what you want about him off the field, but on the football field, it's paid off. Dorsey took some risks, and that paid off. And that Kansas City Chiefs have a Super Bowl ring. I like Veach. I think he's done a phenomenal job. He's a great personnel guy. But the heart and soul of that team And the major piece of that team were drafted by John Dorsey. And you can give Andy Reid credit as being the head coach and someone who's successful. But Andy Reid, he didn't win a Super Bowl with Howie Roseman in Philadelphia. Doug Peterson did. John Dorsey built that team. John Dorsey drafted Chris Jones. And that is a guy that I think has been he's a phenomenal player. He has been he gets better every year. I think he's still 26 or 27 years old. Maybe I might be wrong. Maybe 25. So this guy is a great young player who just signed a $80 million deal. And that is a phenomenal contract for a good player. And actually, I will say this, and this is going to be crazy, especially with the Chiefs coming off the deal they got for Patrick Mahomes. I think that's a good signing for the Chiefs. I think that's cheap for the Chiefs because I think Chris Jones's arrow is ascending, and I think this guy is he's one of those guys that is he an Aaron Donald? No, but he's in that next tier. He's in that next tier interior defensive lineman that will continually get better and better and better. And I think the kid's hungry. He wants to be good. This is one of those guys where you're sitting there, you're saying, okay, that he is he everything he does in the game, everything he's working for is phenomenal. The way he prepares himself, the way he's gotten better every year. So I love the Chris Jones deal. So that takes a franchise tag then away, right? So you have a lot of other organizations that are working against that deadline. And I don't know who gets done. I don't know the next guy that gets done. Myles Garrett, not a franchise tag player. He just signs a huge 5-year, $125 million deal with the Browns. To go back to the Browns, $25 million a year. Now we'll see what the guarantees are. We'll see where that's at. Chris Jones got $60 million guaranteed, which is a heck of a deal for him. But if you're talking about Myles Garrett getting 5 years for $125 million, and this is a guy that took his helmet off, swung it at Mason Rudolph last year, got suspended, missed half the season, and the team still rewards him. The guy's a pillar of the organization. And again, I'm going to go back to this. A John Dorsey draft pick in the Cleveland Browns. John Dorsey drafted Myles Garrett. Denzel Ward. Baker Mayfield. Helped solidify that what John Dorsey did for that team, for the Chiefs and for the Browns, is phenomenal. And I think Dorsey is just the simple fact he's out of football right now is crazy to me. I know he'll be a GM at some point again, but deserves a lot of credit. So let's run through some of these franchise tags and kind of talk about guys I think yes or no they get done. Dak Prescott, quarterback, Dallas Cowboys, no way. There's no way he gets done, especially after Mahomes did his deal. I just think that Dak will sit and ride these franchise tags. He's going to make $31.4 million this year, and he'll continue to just play on the tag until they can get a deal done. And then all of a sudden now, if Deshaun Watson in the offseason gets a deal done, or if they want to extend him early and the Ravens do something with Lamar Jackson if he has another big-time year, Dak's got to see where this is. And again, I don't think Dak is in Patrick Mahomes' category. It's not even close for me where Dak is as far as talent-wise, but that's not how salaries work, right? You're worth what somebody's willing to pay you. And so right now the Cowboys, they're willing to ride him for 31.4. They don't want to pay him any more than that. So if they don't believe in him, they don't want to lock into him. That's something where, you know what, maybe Dak plays this 1 year and you work to trade him. I said that this offseason. I thought they should have done it this offseason. I thought the Cowboys should have tried to trade Dak last year before his contract was up, and let another team worry about signing to a long deal, or do a sign and trade where he signs a deal where the agent's working with another team. You got the deal done and then you trade for him. I thought that's what the Cowboys should have done. I'm not as big a fan. I'm not going to knock Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott's a good quarterback. But Dak's not that much better than what Tony Romo was. Dak's not I don't think Dak's a game changer. I don't think Dak's a difference maker. I'm not as big a fan as Carson Wentz. I have a lot of guys, a lot of the quote-unquote pundits and experts will tell you that they think Carson Wentz is better than Dak Prescott. I know Dallas Cowboy fans don't want to hear that. I get it. I'm fine. But I'm telling you right now that I think when you watch his skill set and what he's done, is he a solid player? Yes, but that offense is not built for Dak Prescott to win games. That offense is built for Ezekiel Elliott to run the ball, and that offensive line to just to grind guys out and win it with the run game, and then let them supplement that with Dak passing attack. Amari Cooper, good receiver. I think Amari Cooper is an underrated good receiver. But again, that's not the Cowboys are built to run, and then when teams stack the box, that's when Dak can win the game. Dak is a solid quarterback. I think Dak is I think Dak can win you a playoff game. But I'm not sitting there telling you, to be honest with you, do I think Dak can lead the Dallas Cowboys to a Super Bowl? No. He needs a lot of guys around him. He needs a ton of guys around him. He needs that running game. He needs that offensive line. And that's me. I know there's some other people that love Dak Prescott. I just think there are more dynamic quarterbacks in the NFL that would vault that offense to a different stratosphere than Dak Prescott. So that's why I think the Cowboys are going to sit and they'll ride him for 1 year and see what they can do next year. But I don't think they won't even come close. Dak's agent should do his job. He should try to get right around that Mahomes money because the salary cap's only going to go up. And as revenue rolls in and the new TV deal comes in, new collective bargaining rolls, those salaries are just going to continue to skyrocket. So they're doing the right thing. So Dak should play for 31.4. Hope he stays healthy, even if he doesn't. I mean, unless it's rare, it's very rare you have a career-threatening injury happen. But I'd ride that 31 to see, and then just let him go. Both sides be happy with it, and then let that play out in 2021. Next guy, Kenyon Drake, running back from the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's a smart move. Here's where the Cardinals have no choice. You just traded for DeAndre Hopkins, Nuke Hopkins from the Texans, right? Unbelievable. Steve Keim, I love you. Nice job, dude. What a steal from the Texans to be able to get him. Kenyon Drake, they got him late last season, kind of off the Dolphins kind of throwaway pile. Kenyon Drake's had some issues with understanding the playbook, certain things with that. But he got to Arizona. He had those issues with the Dolphins. He gets to Arizona and is phenomenal. Has a phenomenal last half of the season, last quarter of the season. You honestly could make a case that he was the second or the fourth quarter MVP of the NFL. But here's where Kenyon Drake's issue is. They don't want to lose him because they got him pretty cheap. And he's a very productive player. But he hasn't proven that he could do it for a full season in Arizona. Also, they got burned with David Johnson. David Johnson, 3 years ago, was the guy. Was the next Larry Johnson, was the next go-to LaDainian Tomlinson. This guy can do it all, catch the ball out of the backfield, run the ball, was just phenomenal in all aspects of the game. And then has those injuries, and now he is part of that Nuke Hopkins trade. He is now Houston Texan. And I hope he can get his career in order. But so that's what limits Drake there in Arizona. They're not going to do a long-term deal after getting burned on a running back. So I think this is one that he'll ride that tag and then see where that happens in 2021. Now, unless Drake's people are come down off the mark because they know backs don't get paid, and they say, hey, we're just going to take, we got to get him something. Let's get him paid. And the Cardinals come to that agreement. That's the only way I think the Drake deal gets done is if it's I'm not going to say a below market. It's got to be in range. I had a solid finish of the year last year. But it's not going to be one of those astronomical numbers where it's the Zeke Elliott, what Gurley got before now he shipped off to Atlanta. It's not going to be one of those type deals. It might be in that 15 to 20 range, maybe 12 to 15 range top paid running backs. That might be a deal I would do if I was Arizona and if I was Drake's people. The next guy, Matt Judon from outside rusher from the Baltimore Ravens. Again, man, the Ravens, they have done a phenomenal job. From Ozzie Newsome all the way then now to Eric DeCosta, their drafting is phenomenal. They win all the time, man. They're just legit good. Their scouting department is so good. My boy George Kokinis and Scotty Cohen up there, man, they're legit. And they get a guy like Matt Judon, and he's played his butt off. And this is after losing Preston Smith. This is after continue losing players to free agency. And they just keep drafting good guys. And for where he fits in in his position. But again, a really good player. I don't think that deal gets done at all. I wouldn't, if I'm him, I wouldn't do that deal. I mean, when you're a double-digit sack guy, man, you deserve to get paid in this league. And so I think he'll ride that tag this year and then play it out in the free agency. AJ Green, I mean, I don't know what Cincinnati Bengals are doing. Like, I don't. AJ Green. I like AJ Green. AJ Green was a great player. I don't know if AJ Green, after his injury, will ever be the same guy he was. Why would you franchise a guy like that? Why would you not be in the discussions to go get DeAndre Hopkins? Why would you not work to better your franchise that way? You already drafted horrible by drafting John Ross at receiver. And now you franchise AJ Green. I don't understand that all the way. AJ Green should be like, yes, I will take this. Free money. So again, there's no way that gets a long-term deal. I don't see that getting done. If it is, AJ Green again, good, go for it, bro. Get your money, get paid. But I wouldn't do it if I was Bengals. I don't know why they franchise him. It doesn't make sense to me. Justin Simmons, safety for the Denver Broncos. He signed his franchise tag. There's no deal, long-term deal will get done. They'll have to wait till after the season. Again, understand this. I didn't explain this at the beginning. If a player does not get a long-term deal signed by tomorrow, then they cannot negotiate until the season is over. So that's kind of the deadline for it. So you might see some action happen in the next couple of days. In the next 24 hours, 36 hours, you might see some moves get made. But it looks like Justin Simmons will not. And again, that he's playing on $11 million and change for a franchise. Not bad for a player who is really had his best season last year and was a vital part of that team. Vic Fangio helped that kid get paid. The best thing that happened to that guy was Vic Fangio coming in and becoming his head coach. So Justin Simmons should sign that tag, collect that money, and go take Fangio out to eat. So good signing by him. Yannick Ngakoue, there's a lot of issues going on in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a mess. I mean, it's just a mess. Dave Caldwell, I don't know how he's made it as long as he's made it. Tom Coughlin ended up getting the brunt of all the issues down there and ended up, have to get booted. Caldwell is just Teflon Don, man. And this guy's made it through tons of poor draft choices, tons of bad free agent signings. And he's got unhappy players. I mean, you got Fournette this offseason coming out and barking about not wanting to be there. And then now you got Yannick, who he doesn't want to be there either. He's begging for a trade. I think somebody will probably end up sweeping in the next by the trade deadline, by the franchise tag deadline, try to get him out of there. Or maybe that's something before the season starts, where somebody will work to try to get him and just have it, if he has his tag, try to get that done. But I mean, that's a risk you take. But again, he doesn't want to be back there. And I mean, that could be a Melvin Gordon situation where he just doesn't show up and just says, I'm not going to do it. Now with the new CBA, there are some protocols as far as you don't get your credited year, your accrued year for free agency. So I would advise that to Yannick. But again, guys are just trying to jump ship from Jacksonville, and that's too bad because Shad Khan's a great owner, and he deserves a winner down there. But with the structure they have right now in their front office, that's not going to happen. I can't see it happening. So I just think there's got to be changes there. There hasn't been enough success. I mean, you are banking on a late round free agent or a late round draft choice quarterback. And Gardner Minshew, love your mustache, love your cut off jeans. I think he's great. I think he's been not the second coming of Tom Brady. He's not going to be. They're not building a franchise. One, because he doesn't have the organizational structure in place. He doesn't have a Bill Belichick running the ship to build a dynasty. But he's just talent-wise, he's a very good player, and he did a heck of a year. Great job for him. But that's not your franchise guy. And the simple fact that they think that is, again, why Jacksonville is struggling and why they'll continue to struggle until they get new front office personnel in there. And then that's not me wishing somebody to get Cam. That's not me. I never want that to happen to anybody. That's just the facts of football, and that's the facts of life. Man, you haven't been in the NFL until you got fired. I mean, that's just any good coach will tell you. That's just life. And I just think that there has to be change in Jacksonville. And you see it because these guys they want out. Nobody wants to be there. And Ngakoue is just another example of that. So Hunter Henry with the Chargers, that he'll just ride his tag and be good for the year. I don't see anything getting done there unless that's a team friendly deal. And the Chargers, man, again, another organization that is kind of a mess. And I don't see that going well for them in LA this year. I think it's gonna be tough for the fans. The fans that show up. I don't know if there is any fans that show up there, but it's just, this is a guy. I was a Charger fan growing up, man. It's hard for me to see where that franchise is falling. And it started for me with Weddle when they let him go unceremonially. It happened now. Antonio Gates, guys that have been staples for this franchise. Heck, started with Sayal, really. Guys that have been staples for this franchise that just kind of get pushed to the side. Now Rivers, Chargers are a mess, and Hunter Henry, just good luck, bud. Good luck. You got Anthony Harris with the Vikings, phenomenal. I mean, that's great for him. That's a payday for him. Mike Zimmer got that guy. Opportunity for the New England Patriots. I think he'll be happy just playing on a franchise tag up there. I know his agent, Mike McCarthy, would love to get something done for him long term, but that's not. It's always going to be a team deal when you're talking about the Patriots. And so I think Joe has been a phenomenal draft choice, has been a phenomenal story for what he's done in his career. And I continue to watch him be successful. Leonard Williams, that's a weird deal for me. That one for me is just a strange tag. It's a strange. I mean, I know where they drafted him high, and I know that they have all this stuff that they expect him to live up to, but the production hasn't really been there. And I think they're gonna. You go into this year, take the tag, and I can't see that him getting a long-term deal. Bud Dupree, the Steelers, a phenomenal player. I thought he had a great year last year. Continues to get better. It helps that defense. Mike Tomlin that defense is legit. It helps having some big boys inside. It helps having Cameron, having Hayward inside, having some of the other guys that are there. But again, I don't see that a long-term deal unless that's a Steeler deal. That's not going to be one of those things where he's not a good of a player as he is. He's not Bud Dupree is not a difference maker type player. That's going to command those big time dollars. And heck, when you got guys like Marcus Golden and Jadeveon Clowney on the street, you can go find yourself some 8 to 10 sacks still that are out there on the street. So that part, that's why Bud and probably Matt Judon probably will not get paid. And same way with Shaq Barnett down with Tampa. I think out of all those guys, I thought Shaq is the most improved, but I thought he was the better. And again, goes back to what I was talking about with Chris Jones. He's still an ascending player. I mean, this is a guy that was with the Broncos and wasn't even kind of talked about, kind of throwaway player. Nobody really was, okay, you know what, we lose him. You know what, we'd rather keep Chubb, and we'd rather, we have Shane Ray, and they were trying to get, with Vaughn and some other guys mixing in the mix. Barrett just kind of got, well, see ya. And he had a phenomenal year. And if you watch his film, if you are a fan, I still think it's free. I think you can go watch all NFL. I think NFL 22, whatever else, on NFL.com. Go watch some plays. Heck, go to my Twitter account at Bridges Football. I did a breakdown of them. There's I think I had 3 plays on there, and there were so many great plays, I couldn't even decide what plays to put on there. It was like seriously, this dude had every play was awesome. He's covering dudes out of the backfield, chasing guys downfield. I mean, he rush end, he could drop into coverage as an outside linebacker. I'm not so sure you probably couldn't throw him out and play some safety. I mean, he is just a freak. I love him. So that's a guy. Now, that's a guy, if I'm Tampa, I would try to get a long-term deal done. Jason Light needs to lock that guy down. That would be me. And I think that's something, if I'm in Tampa and I'm working on that staff, I'm fighting with them to get him locked up. And because that is a staple for your defense. And he's a guy that is the players and the community loves. And and those are guys you want, right? The guys that have the chip on their shoulder, the guys that are still fighting, because no matter what, even when he gets paid, he's still going to believe, well, I got to lead the league in sacks. Again, I got to go become all pro. I want to go become the defensive player of the year. He's one of those kind of guys. Those are guys you build teams around. So Derrick Henry, that deal doesn't get done. Running backs just aren't getting paid, man. So that's why not franchise a running back? Running backs aren't going to get paid. And unfortunately for Derrick Henry, the fact that he's such a big guy and takes so many hits, it's going to be hard for him to get a long-term deal. If I'm a front office team, if I'm John Robinson, their GM, I'm not long-term in him, because you've seen what happened to all the running backs that get long-term contracts. They get 2-3 years out of it, and that's it. Then they're shipped off. Heck, Gurley couldn't even get that. So I don't see Derrick Henry getting a deal done, and and then the other one is one of my guys. I just think this is hard for me to say because I'm an Iowa State Cyclone. Iowa offensive lineman would just produce a stud offensive lineman. Brandon Shreve, man, he is just a freaking badass, and I love him, man, with the Washington team. I was almost going to say Skins, but they're not anymore. So with the Washington team, but he's getting to play on $15 million this year. He's worth probably he's probably worth 22. I mean, I know offensive linemen don't really get paid that. Interior offensive linemen aren't getting paid that, but that's why we have the franchise tag, because that's the median. But he is a stud, and he has been phenomenal for that team, and he's one of the staples for that team. And because they suck so long, you don't hear much about him. He doesn't get enough Pro Bowl votes and All Pro votes, and he's not one of those names that you see because they just never see him on TV for the playoffs. I'm telling you, folks, go watch some film of Brandon Shreve, and you're like, yeah, that dude's a dog. In any other situation, any other team, he's probably a perennial, like you're talking about him as an all-pro every year type player. And, I would like to see them get a long-term deal for the team done, because I think what Ron could do there is change the culture that needs to be done big time. That place needs to be just wiped clean. Not only a name change, that whole structure just needs to be just whitewashed and just completely scrubbed of all the toxins that have been in that building, all the firings, all the backstabbings, all the other stuff that's happened with the Redskins. That needs to just be started over from. And a guy you can do that with a guy like Brandon Shreve. That he's one of those guys that can be a staple for trying to revamp and restart this franchise. And I would lock him down if I'm there. Now that's up to him, right? I mean, maybe he's like, shoot, I want to ride this 1 year out and see if I can get to free agency and get to a different team. But I think Ron Rivera is the guy for that, to turn that franchise around. And I think it not only does it start with a new name, but it starts with locking up players like Brandon Shreve. And so that's what I would highly recommend doing if I was the Washington Redskins. Hey, I want to wrap this up. I know I've got a little long-winded here, and I want to try to keep these shorter than half an hour. So I'm going to bust out on Tuesdays. I'm going to do those rookies that everybody to be looking for as we get into free agency, as rookies that you can see will be making impact in their conference or in their division. So we're going to do the AFC North today. Last week I worked on the AFC East. Again, you can always go find all of those these podcasts. You can find them on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. Again, it's Bridges Brawl. You can also find it on the YouTube channel, the Brawl Network. You can find it on our YouTube channel, but it's under Bridges Breakdowns. You just type in Bridges Breakdowns, Google that. You can find it. Also on my Facebook page, Bridges Football. I wait a couple days to put the videos up so people can listen to the podcast. But if you're sitting at home or you just want to see my ugly mug, and I apologize for this face, it's not my fault. We'll blame that on Bob and Pam. But if you want to see this, you can always jump on my Facebook and on Bridges Football, and you'll be able to see them a couple days. It's a couple days removed. So if you want to hear it fresh, get on the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcast. But last week I did the AFC East. Talked about a couple receivers. Denzel Mims for the Jets. Today we're going to do the AFC North. Ravens. Patrick Queen, linebacker, LSU stud. One of my favorite players in the draft. I think he has a chance to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think he has a chance to be a difference maker. He fits in line with all of those stud linebackers that continually have had it with the Ravens since Ozzie started, when they brought that franchise, came over from Cleveland. And they, of course, started with Ray Lewis, and it just went through from Bart Scott to the Preston Smiths to the Matt Judons to just unbelievable linebackers. Have been the Terrell Suggs, interior guys, exterior guys that just keep playing, and they draft well. Pat Queen is one of those guys that CJ Mosley, don't let me leave him out of there, but Pat Queen is one of those guys I think is just going to be a huge difference maker. And I think he comes in as one of those alpha dogs, starts right away, and will be a difference maker his first year. On the defensive side, on the offensive side, Tyree Phillips from Mississippi State, offensive guard. Not one of those guys when he's not a dancing bear. You're not going to ever you're never going to confuse him with, a guy that's, dancing around really quick on his feet. But he is a definition of a just ground and pound mauler, a guy for that run game that they're building with Lamar Jackson and with Mark Ingram, throwing around Alabama running backs, Derrick Henry, Trent Richardson. Sorry, Trent Richardson was a stud college player. Sorry, he got a horrible NFL career, but Mark Ingram, I regress. Mark Ingram, that run game that they got going on up there in Baltimore is phenomenal. And I think he's probably not going to play. They're returning all their starters on the offensive line for the Ravens, but he's going to be one of those guys that could have some snaps as we get going, especially if there's no preseason. He's going to be behind in the playbook, but one of those guys, they have a veteran offensive line that can help him, can mentor him. He's a guy that you get, if you get up in games, throw him in, get a couple snaps, get some live action. But he's one of those guys that I'm not saying he's going to be a star this year. He shouldn't start. Hopefully he doesn't have to start. But he's a name to watch for the future. I think he's got, for that offense, he's a perfect guy, interior lineman guard, right or left guard for that offense. With the Bengals, let's keep it on the offensive line, on the offensive side. Hakeem Adeniji from Kansas, KU. I had the pleasure of going over to Kansas for spring practice last year and watching him in the summer and the fall camp. And he was unbelievable athlete. Now, not a big guy, 6'4", 6'3.5", 6'4", but just light on his feet, played tackle for them. Is projected to play some tackle for the Bengals, but also could play center, could play guard, probably could play all 5 positions. Maybe use him as a extra power tight end in goal line situations. I wouldn't be surprised if they use him as an extra offensive lineman this year. But that's a guy that I think potential and athletic ability, versatility lead me to believe that he could be a long-term starter in the NFL. If that's for the Bengals, hey, that's up to the Bengals. But this kid is a really good football player and has a lot of talent. And I look for him to be – I think he'll get some snaps this year for the Bengals. I think they're going to need him, especially with a young quarterback in Burrows. I think that you can start – you need to rebuild this nucleus. Zach Taylor needs to rebuild this team. And it starts with Joe Burrows. But when you get a guy like Hakeem Adeniji as on the offensive line, plug him in, let him play. You missed on Billy Price. You missed on a couple other guys in the drafts. Adeniji is a guy I'd give opportunity to. On the defensive side, Akeem Davis, Gaither, they drafted 3 linebackers this year. But he's the one I think is, and he was the second one. I think he's got the most opportunity to start right away because he's so versatile. He's kind of an undersized guy, but he's a guy that can play that big safety, cover tight ends in nickel situations. I think Akeem's got that opportunity to do it. You're going to see a lot of new starters, a lot of new players on the front 7 for the Bengals. Some veterans, they signed up a lot of free agents and a lot of corners in free agency. But I think they're going to have, when they got Gaither Davis in there, Davis Gaither at linebacker, expect him to be maybe their nickel linebacker. He kind of fits in that undersized spot, but he can cover, great with his hips, great lateral movement. Look for him to play some valuable snaps for that Bengals defense this year. For the Browns, their left tackle, the guy who's going to be their staple, who replaces, I think, one of the best tackles of all time, Joe Thomas. I know Joe's been removed a year, phenomenal radio guy, great on TV, but Jedrick Willis for Alabama tackle, just, man, his heavy hands, he's got great feet. You can go to my YouTube, go to my Twitter account. You can see the video, my breakdown of him that I did, and I rave about him. Phenomenal football player. Go to Bridges Football on my on Facebook, and you can see what I talk about him. The guy's great. Find it on YouTube as well. I got a guy, but they're D tackle out of Missouri, Jordan Elliott. Big fan of his. I think that they got him in the 4th round, I think, and he's going to be a guy that's going to play. They need some help, right? Just got Myles Garrett done with the big time contract. They still need some interior defensive help, and this is a guy that I think is going to be, because he's so active with his hands, and so he's really active with his feet. He's one of those guys that doesn't need a lot of training camp that guys are going to miss, because you can plug and play him in. And he's going to be one of those that you can just, hey, we're going to get him on 3rd down pass rush. We're going to use him in goal line situations. We're going to use him, kind of bring him into the season a little bit. And then late in the year, I think he'll be a big time contributor for the Browns. So I'm really looking for big things out of Jordan Elliott. And then last but not least, Steelers, Chase Claypool. I like him as a tight end. And I think I know he's listed as a receiver with the Steelers. I'm sure he'll play some receiver with the Steelers, but I would use him. You don't need to have him be as a true Y. And I know that sometimes these titles in the NFL are skewed because you have the Kittles, because you have the Kelseys, because you have some of the Austin Hoopers. You have tight ends that are on the move, these H-back type guys. And I think Claypool can fit that. I mean, the dude tore up Iowa State, man, in the bowl game when Notre Dame played Iowa State. He's a friggin' stud. I give the guy, he's the man. But he doesn't have that. Even though he ran a fast time, he doesn't play up to his 40 time they ran at the combine. And I'm not saying, but I would use him in a mismatch. Against outside corners, I think those guys they can lock him up. But if you slide him in the inside and put him over a nickel linebacker, put him over some of those undersized safeties that guys that have to come down now, I think he can win in those situations. And that's what I just think he's one of those dudes. You slide, put him, just put him 3x3 off of the tackle or off the tight end. Let him run some 10-yard, 12-yard hooks and some hitch routes. Throw him the ball and then let him just with his yards after carry. I think he'd be huge. So that's where I think that if the Steelers right, I think he could be a big time weapon on the interior, and then that frees Juju Schuster to go over the top, and I think that could be a huge 1-2 combination. I like Vance McDonald, the tight end too. I think that'd be a nice addition in there on their offense. But for me, that's how I would have a different package for Chase Claypool than maybe if in any other offenses. And that defense. Big defensive tackle Carlos Davis from Nebraska, late round pick. But again, they could use some interior guys for the Steelers, and it always seems like this, right? The Steelers guys from Casey Hampton, throughout the years, they get these big hosses, right? Steve McClendon's and these big just dudes that just hold down the interior. You don't really hear about them. They're not. They get no fanfare. They don't got there's no parade for these guys, but they got rings. But they got they win. And they hold down the interior of the defense for the Steelers. And I think Carlos Davis, I really think that he can be it's going to take him a little bit of time, but he's a pile driver, man mover. Put him on the inside, let him eat up blocks, let the middle linebackers flow, and let him make plays. And I think that's it. Watch for him to have some decent snaps this year for the Steelers. Again, if we have an NFL season, I'm moving forward like we are. So, folks, I just want to appreciate you for tuning in again to another edition of Bridges Brawl. You will see me here every Wednesday and every Friday as we move forward into this 2020 NFL season. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Again, you can find it on iTunes, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, Facebook, Bridges Football, Twitter, Bridges Football, everywhere. Bridges Football. Just Google Bridges Football, and you'll find everything you need. And you can always DM me on Twitter. You can always hit me up on my messages on Facebook, Instagram, wherever else. Find me on YouTube's Bridges Breakdown as well. And God bless. Take care. And the next episode.